Hello, friend. Welcome back today. I am so glad you're here with me. And I want to know if any of these sound familiar to you. Have you ever said something like, I'll start once the kids are back in school? Or once this season is over, then I'll really commit. Or, man, it'll just be easier when things finally slow down. I have said different versions of these, and I truly believed them. And then I did some planning, and someone asked me a question that seemed to dismantle the whole thing for me. And I haven't been able to unhear this answer ever since. So today, I want to give you the same question that was given to me, because I think it might be the reason the thing you've been meaning to start still hasn't started yet. Do you ever find yourself Googling, how do I stop thinking about him? Or have you ever started your day determined to keep no contact, only to feel pulled right back into the same patterns and shame? Welcome to Intimacy After Infidelity. You're not crazy for feeling this way. I'm Christina Joy, and I've been exactly where you are. I know what it feels like to be overwhelmed by shame and wonder if dignity and peace are actually possible for you. I tried to fix myself by trying harder and committing to more self-control, but what I actually needed was healing from Jesus, who met me in the middle of it all. And that's what this podcast is here to help you do too. In this space, we heal the soul, heart, mind, and body, and we talk about the real things like longing, grief, shame, and confusion. So take a deep breath, friend. You are safe here. Friend, before we dive into this today, I want to just lay out for you exactly what's happening in September. The Encounter Retreat, September 25th through 27th in Panama City Beach, Florida. 10 women will be gathering at a beautiful beach house on the water, all inclusive, meaning I handle the food, the lodging, the flow of the whole weekend. You don't think about a single logistic once you step off that airplane. And here's the shape of it. So you are going to arrive on Friday to a house full of women who already understand a little piece of your story and where you're coming from. It's unhurried. There's real conversation that happens over breakfast. There's time on the beach with no agenda, no phone, no responsibilities. And there's space to actually hear from God instead of just trying to squeeze him into the 10 minutes you have before the house wakes up. Saturday, we go deeper. You have an encounter with God. And Sunday, you give hugs to the women who have witnessed and experienced transformation. And you say not just goodbye to those women, but I will talk to you later, and we will continue to support each other on this journey that we're both on. And Sunday, you step back onto that airplane different than the woman you were when you came. There's no workbook with a fill-in-the-blank curriculum. And let me be clear, there is no swapping of trauma stories in a circle. This is an encounter with a loving Father and a good God. And this is a room full of women who won't flinch at what you are bringing before God. So, friend, email me the word retreat and let's talk about whether September is the right next step for you. I would love to have you there. Okay, so this question that was given to me was actually back in the spring, a couple months ago. I was mapping out my schedule for the summer, and I'll be honest, I was doing it in some AI because I love just the back and forth conversation and the strategy planning that I can have. School was ending, my workload was about to get significantly lighter, and I had this whole plan for what I was finally going to implement once I had the space and the capacity. And in the middle of this planning with my AI, I got asked a question that I really wasn't ready for. It asked me, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you could actually follow this structure that we were just planning? Not perfectly, but just follow it consistently. And I answered honestly. I said, I'm actually not super confident because I've been wanting to build this particular morning rhythm for months and I still haven't done it. And I keep telling myself it'll be easier when school is over and my schedule opens up. Here's how it responded to me. If a habit doesn't exist in constraint, it usually doesn't appear in freedom. And I sat with that for a while because I had been telling myself I had a scheduling problem. I did not have a scheduling problem, to be honest. I had a trust problem. I had made a promise to myself that I had not been keeping, and I had built a very reasonable story about why it was my calendar's fault. So here is something else that surprised me. I assumed that when my constraint lifted, when I had more hours, when school was over, when I felt like I would have more time, I assumed the habit would show up. More time, more margin, more room to finally do the thing. But in reality, when the constraint lifts, you don't just get more time, you actually get more decisions that you have to make. You get more emotional space, which sounds lovely, until you realize emotional space is where the I'll do it later lives. You suddenly have more options, and every option is one more moment where you have to choose all over again. It's all about these decisions that you have to make now. But when you were in this constraint, the decisions were sort of made for you. You see, when there's one 20-minute window in your day, you either use it or you don't. There's no negotiating about it. But when the whole afternoon is open, you'll negotiate with yourself for 3 hours, and then it's dinner time. So the woman waiting for a lighter season to become more disciplined is usually waiting for something that isn't coming. The lighter season brings its own noise. It just sounds different. Now, around the time that I was originally wrestling with this idea of habits and rhythms and creating a new life, it was shortly after I confessed my affair to my husband, and my church was working through the book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Pete Scazzero. And in that book, I got introduced to the idea of a rule of life. And the word rule might make you flinch at first because for some people, the word rule sounds rigid. It sounds like something a person does who is naturally disciplined, and they just have that personality to follow the rules. And I just wasn't sure if that was me. But in that book, Scazzero uses an image to reframe all of this. He talks about this rule of life like a trellis. Now, if you've never heard that word before, just imagine like a grapevine, and vines need to grow up. They don't necessarily just sit in the dirt. They have to grow up and climb something. And so a trellis isn't a cage. It isn't punishment. And the trellis itself doesn't make the plant grow. But what it does is it gives the plant something to climb so that the growth that's already happening with the plant has somewhere to go. It's a support. So without a trellis, sure, the vine still grows, but it sprawls along the ground where maybe it's not getting the most sunlight that it could be, or maybe it's easier to get stepped on. It's just not good for the plant. So this trellis, this support, this encouragement for growth, that was the shift. So I stopped thinking about structure as a restriction, and even now I'm like clenching my fists, something that I have to do and it's so hard. No. I started thinking about this idea of habits and rhythms as support. It was there to give me support underneath and to help me grow. And so I built one. Not an impressive one. But here's an example of what mine looked like. 2 minutes of silence in the morning and 2 minutes at night. Set a timer, build up to it. We can talk about what that is or why I did that later. But it wasn't 2 hours. It was 2 minutes. And I also committed to reading a psalm or a chapter from the Bible once a day. And you know what? In a very particular season, I had a longer block of time. Every day I had an hour or two, and I committed to reading scripture and just sitting in God's presence for that time instead of cleaning my house or, any other thing that I could have found to do. I also committed to walking a little bit every day, even if it just meant going around my block. And I also started paying attention to my water intake and how much sleep I was getting, which sounds almost like insultingly simple until you realize how many days you go without paying attention to those things. So, friend, you might hear that list and you're like, okay, Christina, I've heard these things before. I know, none of it's dramatic, but I needed to intentionally commit to these things, and all of it added up to becoming a woman who could hear from God again. So here's the picture I come back to with the women that I coach. You need the river. Okay, the river is movement, it's life, it's freedom, it's flow, and it's flowing forward. You need the river, and you also need the river bank, because a river without banks isn't more free. It's a flood, and it spreads out thin over everything, and it stops going anywhere. So freedom with no limits is not the goal. That's not safety, and it's not healthy. The goal is a life with enough shape that the movement inside of it can actually get somewhere. So when you think about, man, I just want to feel free, the question today is not how do I get rid of every limit? It's what are the guardrails that keep my life pointed in the direction I actually want to go? Now, I want to give you a really obvious one in our world because it's just the clearest example. This example of, hey, I need to stop talking to the guy who's pulling my heart away from God and my marriage. That's an example of the constraint. I need to stop talking to this guy. It's hard. It's unglamorous. It's deeply uncomfortable. And I want to tell you what happened on the other side of that for me. Once I lived inside that boundary of, hey, I'm going to stop talking to this guy, I was then free to find myself. Then I was free to heal. And friend, let me tell you, I tried to do my healing while in contact with this guy, and it didn't work. But once I cut contact and ended things, then I was free to pursue Jesus without this running argument or shame in the back of my mind. I was free to sleep, and I was free to be present with my kids without half of me wishing I was somewhere else. So the constraint of, hey, I'm not going to talk to him anymore, it didn't take my freedom. It's actually what gave me my freedom. It's what made it possible. And I say that as the woman who resisted it for years, who kept looking for a version of healing that didn't require the hard boundary. And that version doesn't exist. Believe me, I looked. So I want to be honest about what I think it actually lies underneath this, if there's any resistance coming up for you. Because I know you are not lazy. And I don't think that it's a problem of lacking discipline. I think a lot of women are afraid to commit and go all in on themselves. Because committing means that you might not follow through. And not following through on a promise in front of yourself really hurts. And so it's safer to keep the plan vague, because if you never fully commit, then you don't run the risk of failing. Friend, this season of ending things and figuring out what's next, I know that it's work. It's real work. And you're building a rhythm when you're already exhausted and grieving, and running a household, and all of that is genuinely hard. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I get it. But here's what I've watched happen over and over. Every kept promise adds a grain of rice on a balance scale from one side of the scale to the other. Every time a grain of rice gets moved, you're saying, I do what I say I'm going to do. I did what I said I was going to do. And you're moving that rice one at a time. And when enough of those stack up, something shifts. You stop being a woman who hopes that she'll change, and you become a woman who has evidence that she has changed. So, that story I told you was back at the beginning of summer. It was May and June, and now it's the middle of August. Backpacks are out, schedules are resetting, and this is genuinely one of the best windows of the year to build something new, because everything and everyone is already in motion. But I don't want you to start with the habits, because that's easy to create a checklist and a to-do list. So I don't want you to start there. I want you to start somewhere else. Who do you actually want to be this year? Not what do you want to do, who do you want to be this year? And I mean that. Go grab a notebook, go grab a journal and a pen, and jot some of those notes down that are coming to mind. Who do you want to be? The woman who is present with her kids instead of half gone? The woman who hears from God regularly instead of occasionally? The woman who keeps her word to herself? The woman who is genuinely free and not just a little bit further away from the thing that hurt her? Picture her and get specific. And then ask the only question that matters after all that. Once you know who she is, then ask, what does she do? Your habits are not a to-do list. The habits that you create are the trellis that she climbs. Ephesians 2:10 says, you are God's workmanship, created for good works that God prepared beforehand, that you would walk in them. Prepared beforehand. This version of you, this healed and whole and grounded and confident version of you that you want to be, she already exists in the mind of God. You're not inventing her from scratch in an empty room. But today you get to build the structure that lets you become her. So this week, if I could give you an invitation to do something, name one constraint that could actually create more freedom for you. Just one. And make it small enough that you will actually do it. If it's 2 minutes of silence, if it's one walk, if it's a phone boundary of maybe giving your phone a bedtime, some boundary that you've been circling but haven't drawn yet. Not because the constraint is the point, but it's the woman that you are becoming. Friend, I would love to know what you've picked, because I would love to cheer you on and encourage you. And so would you just send me a quick note, an email about what you are doing this week? Seriously, I personally read every single email and I write back. And there's something about saying it out loud to another person that makes it real and concrete in a way that just journaling can't do. So Christina@ChristinaJoyCoaching.com. Let me know, what are you working on this week so I can pray for you by name and encourage you. And if what you actually need is some time outside of your regular life to figure out who she is and what God is saying to her, email me and just ask me about the retreat. I'd love to give you some more information. September has 10 seats, and I would love for one of them to be yours. God, would you show my sister the one thing that you are asking her to build? What is the one structure, the one piece of her trellis? Give her courage to start it while life is still full, not later. And God, would you meet her in the small, faithful, ordinary days? In Jesus' name, amen.